question.
Oh.
We were handed an agenda. You have to fill out this agenda in this way every time. We were told when to meet. We have been constrained with whom we can meet with. And then on top of that, either the principal, the vice principal, or, God forbid, the director of curriculum and instruction comes and sits in on your meeting. So you weigh every word that comes out of your mouth. They choose the books that we read. They choose the protocol that we use. It's just all part of their bigger plan to micromanage everything we do.
One of the things we did with these literacy academies is they were based on writing and writing as a process. And so I do want to go ahead and at least start that activity. But we based it on the writing. And the teachers, I think, were encouraged to then write about things that really matter to them. They had that hesitation, like, what should I say? Well, I don't care what you say. It's okay. We're all teachers experiencing similar issues. But the writing brings out those honest ideas that you want to maybe and should be talking about in a classroom. So this activity that I'm going to work with you on comes from Linda Reef, who is a middle school teacher. This is, you see it has a foreword by Nancy Atwell. So she's in good company here. But I've had this book for a very long time. It comes from chapter 3, which is immersion in reading and writing. I've used it with junior high. I always use it with my high school kids. I've used it with college. And I've used it in both the Literacy Academy and the Northland Writing Academy as a first activity because it's so multidimensional. It's wonderful. It takes you so many different places. It's at the very beginning of the school year. It sets atmosphere and a number of other things that we'll briefly talk about. So you should have 3 cards in front of you. Would you take one card and fold it? Hot dog, hamburger?
Hamburger.
Fold a hamburger, please. Take the second card and fold it hamburger. And the last card is flat. Okay, so 2 cards folded hamburger, and on the inside of those, 1, 2, so one side is 1, the other side is 2, and then you have 3, 4, and then the last card is 5. That's flat. And this is an activity that does require and in the interest of time, we're not going to do this. I can at least get you started on this, okay? Is everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to do some writing. And on side 1, would you write down 5 questions that you might ask your partner to get to know them better? What would be an example of a question you would ask? Like, where did you go? Where did you go? What would be another?
And how long have we talked?
Questions you want to call these? So write down 5 questions that you would ask each person to get to know them. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to write those down. You have a fancy time. Uh-oh, time's up. I'm sorry, we really are just going to run out of time on this. So let's hear a couple of questions. I'll just model for you real quickly how I would do this. What are a couple of questions that you wrote down? With you, what's one?
I wrote, what hobbies do you pursue outside of school?
Okay, good.
I wrote down what brought you into teaching.
Oh, very good. Okay, now, what you would do, then you check in the class, make sure everybody has some good questions down, and you say, well, you can guess what you're going to do next. You're going to turn to your partner, and I'm going to give you 3 to 5 minutes. That's about 1.5 minutes each, and you're going to ask those questions, and you're going to write them down on your card. So then we go through that process. So let's do that. Answer your own question.
One of my questions was, what's your favorite book? And it's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, very good. Deb?
I said, where did you grow up? And I grew up here in Kansas City.
Okay, Andy.
What's your favorite hobby? Of course, gardening.
Okay.
Where were you born? The question is for me. I was born in South America.
What brought you into teaching was my question, and I would have to say great teachers.
Okay. All right. So then after you give everybody 3 to 5 minutes they write those down. And in this activity, it's so much fun. There's a lot of noise. There's a really high noise level with this. And if you do this, imagine doing this at the beginning of the year with your students, maybe students who don't know each other. And it's a wonderful way for people to do 2 things. That is to talk, and that is to write. And then stop them when the timer goes off, and you hear a couple of good answers, and you go, well done, everybody. But we're not done. So some of you might guess what we're going to do next. Maybe we'll guess what we're going to do next. Please turn to card 3. And on card 3, what I want you to do is to write down 5 questions to ask that person to get to know that person better. And you get that by looking over your answers on 2. What about those answers surprised you? What did you want to know more about? If you're thinking Donald Murray, he always said, write about what surprised you. So what surprised you? What would you like to know more about? So give people just a second to write. Now say, Deb, for example, what do you want to know more about? What question would you ask?
Like I might ask her, what was it about the Mockingbird that your favorite book? What was it about that book that you really liked?
And then if it all involves that book, what are some other questions that you might ask because you're interested in your reading material?
Was there a specific character that you identified with? What was going on in your life when you were reading that book?
Very good. So then you call for, okay, everybody, what kind of questions do you have? And we talk about other questions are more focused and a little bit more in depth. And then everybody's going, oh, I know what we get to do next. And you say, almost. You almost know what you get to do next. You're going to ask that person, your partner, those questions this time. You're going to be writing down, paying attention to a couple of things. 1, gestures. How does this person look? And what does this person do when this person answers a question? Your question. Some people talk with their hands a lot, for example. Some people get right in your face. Some people look at you. Or some people, if they're talking about something they love, they look away. They look at the sky. So your job is twofold on 4s. Write down what they say, paying attention to the gestures, but also writing down direct quotes. I don't know if I've said anything direct quotable or not, but I try to use my hands a lot. I try to look directly at you, so things that are important to me. So then you give about the same amount of time, just about 5 minutes, not too long. You want people actually to still be writing when the buzzer goes off, because it's a carefully controlled writing situation. Because you know what kids will do. What did you do over the summer? Are you going out? No, that's not the time. And so then you call for those kinds of answers. So, Dad, tell me, when you were asking your questions about the book, ask one of your questions, see how she answers it.
What was it about To Kill a Mockingbird that really attracted you to that book?
I was in 9th grade and I was starting to question the way that my community was set up, and when I went to school, it was very homogenous. I never had actually ever gone to school with anybody who was different from me until I got to middle school, and so I started picking up on the fact that maybe this ingrained racism that I grew up with, maybe that wasn't the norm and it wasn't okay. And so that book, because I figured out a lot of stuff through reading books, from that book I went on to read Maya Angelou and people like that. So that book kind of sort of spoke to these questions that I was starting to have. And then besides that, I love the characters. Jim's probably my least favorite. I love Atticus and Scout and that interplay between them. Harper Lee just made these characters that I could really, really connect to.
So what did she do that you noticed?
I noticed as she was thinking back, she looked off. I could tell she was getting those memories, and then she used a lot of gestures, a lot. She did this a lot, which I could feel that passion kind of rolling out of you for the story. And I could see how she made personal connections with what was going on in her life in the book, and the characters in the book.
That would be wonderful, some wonderful things to share in the classroom and to provide somebody to do some writing, I think. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. So then you call upon folks to talk about some things that were important to them, and then you say, well, now this is what we get to do. You get to reread your answers that you have down, and on the plain card on number 5, what you get to do is to write an introduction of this person to the rest of the class. So you're taking your notes that you have gestures, quotes, and ideas, and creating an introduction. Of course, this does a number of wonderful things, and to follow some of Donald Murray's advice, look for the surprises. What surprised you about this person? And try to find a lead. And then what is a lead? Deb, do you know what a lead is?
It is the opening of your story that will pull in your reader.
Opening tries to tie everything in together. And then the most wonderful thing happens is that you say, oh, set your timer, and then for 11 minutes you have your class writing on the first day of school in silence. And it's just, it's very exciting when you do this. Now, one of the problems is that if your kids don't know what a lead is and you want to help them along with it, you can give them a model if you want. I always try to model it with kids or staff. Teachers don't have too many problems getting stuck. But I do have down one that I wrote several years ago as an example of a lead. I was interviewing a man, and even though I interviewed him, I still felt as if I didn't know very much about him. So this was my lead. Bob Smith is still a mystery to me. And that then enabled me to take some of the information and I had a good introduction then, because if he was a mystery to me, you must also meet this mysterious man who has so many wonderful things going on about him. And so I wrote that, and I ended it with, the mystery continues. So that turned out well. You can give examples to your students, but if whatever you start with, they're going to do too.